In the harsh deserts of southern Jordan lies an enigma carved in stone, a city that shouldn't exist, a civilization that defied nature. Over 2,000 years ago, long before the rise of Rome's emperors or China's Great Wall, a tribe of nomads accomplished the impossible. They built a thriving metropolis in one of the most unforgiving environments on Earth. This is Petra. But how did these desert wanderers transform barren cliffs into an architectural masterpiece? How did they create wealth that rivaled the treasuries of Rome? And perhaps most remarkably, how did they find water where there was none? Join us as we unravel one of archaeology's greatest mysteries, a forgotten civilization that once controlled the crossroads of the ancient world. To understand the miracle of Petra, we must first understand its creators. The story begins not with stone masons or architects, but with wanderers. The Nabateans first appear in historical records around the 4th century BCE. They originated as nomadic Bedouin tribes from northern Arabia, moving with their herds across vast deserts, following the rhythms of seasons and sparse water sources. What makes the Nabateans fascinating is their rapid cultural evolution. In just a few generations, they transformed from camel-herding nomads into sophisticated city builders and international traders. It's one of the most dramatic societal transformations in ancient history. Early accounts describe the Nabateans as skilled raiders. Greek historian Diodorus Siculus wrote that they were exceptionally fond of freedom and could disappear into the desert where no enemy could follow. But these nomads were shrewd observers. They recognized that the deserts they called home sat at the crossroads of emerging trade networks connecting India, Arabia, Egypt, and the Mediterranean world. Rather than continuing their raids, the Nabateans made a pivotal strategic decision. They would become the protectors and facilitators of this lucrative trade. This shift from raiders to traders represents a sophisticated understanding of economics. They realized that sustainable wealth came not from stealing goods once, but from taxing and facilitating their movement continually. It was a brilliant pivot that set them on the path to empire. The Nabateans positioned themselves as middlemen in one of history's most profitable commodities markets, luxury goods. Frankincense and myrrh, worth more than their weight in gold, were essential for religious ceremonies throughout the ancient world. These aromatic resins came from trees that grew only in southern Arabia and parts of Africa. By controlling their transport northward, the Nabateans established a near monopoly on these precious substances. Their intimate knowledge of desert paths, hidden water sources, and navigation techniques made them indispensable guides. No other people could move valuable goods through such inhospitable terrain with comparable safety. As their wealth and influence grew, so did their territory. At their height, Nabatean influence stretched from Damascus in the north to Hegra in the south, and from the Mediterranean coast to the Arabian desert. They established a network of outposts and settlements spanning modern-day Jordan, Israel, Syria, and Saudi Arabia. But they needed something more, a capital worthy of their growing status and defensible against increasingly interested imperial powers. They found the perfect location, a hidden valley encircled by towering sandstone mountains, accessible only through a narrow gorge that could be defended by a handful of soldiers against an army. Here, among these rose-colored cliffs, they would build their masterpiece. The site offered natural protection, but presented an existential challenge: water. The region receives less than 6 inches of rainfall annually, concentrated in brief, violent winter storms. How could a major city possibly survive here? When you look at ancient civilizations, water management is always critical. But what the Nabateans accomplished in Petra goes beyond engineering. It's a complete reimagining of how humans can interact with an arid environment. the Nabateans created what may be the ancient world's most sophisticated water collection, storage, and distribution system. Every aspect of their city was designed with water harvesting in mind. They built a complex network of dams across the surrounding hills and valleys, designed to slow the powerful flash floods that occasionally swept through the region. Rather than allowing these rare deluges to destroy their city, they channeled the water into cisterns carved into solid rock. These underground reservoirs could store millions of gallons of water, keeping it cool and minimizing evaporation in the desert heat. Along the walls of the Siku, the narrow gorge forming the main entrance to Petra, they carved channels to capture every drop of rainfall and spring water. Underneath these visible channels ran parallel ceramic pipes, carrying clean drinking water into the city. These weren't crude ditches. They were precisely engineered with specific gradients to control water flow. At key points, they installed sedimentation traps to keep the water clean, and distribution basins to allocate it throughout the city. The precision is remarkable. The Nabateans understood principles of hydraulic engineering that wouldn't be formalized in the West until the Renaissance. Their water systems show evidence of careful calculation regarding flow rates, pressure, and sedimentation. They lined their cisterns with waterproof cement made from lime, sand, and crushed pottery. Some of these structures remain watertight to this day, over 2 millennia later. At peak capacity, Petra's water system could store enough water to sustain a population of 30,000 people through months of drought, an almost inconceivable achievement in an era before modern pumps or materials. This mastery of water allowed the Nabateans to create something truly astonishing: gardens in the desert. Archaeological evidence suggests that parts of Petra featured lush vegetation, pools, and even fountains. Imagine the psychological impact on visitors. After days traversing parched deserts, they would arrive at a city where water seemed to flow in abundance, a demonstration of both Nabatean technological prowess and immense wealth. Their water management extended to public and private infrastructure. They constructed public baths, toilets with running water, and drainage systems to prevent disease, luxuries many Europeans wouldn't enjoy until the 19th century. The Nabateans didn't just survive in the desert, they thrived in it. They turned what should have been their greatest weakness into their greatest strength. Water wasn't just managed, it was celebrated. From mountain to basin, the entire landscape was transformed into an integrated water harvesting system. It represents one of humanity's greatest triumphs over environmental constraints. Having mastered water, the Nabateans turned their attention to stone. The soft sandstone cliffs surrounding their city presented both a challenge and an opportunity. Over several centuries, they transformed these natural formations into more than 800 monuments, including tombs, temples, a theater, and civic buildings. What makes Nabatean architecture extraordinary isn't just its beauty, but how it represents a cultural crossroads. These were people exposed to Egyptian, Greek, Roman, and Mesopotamian styles through their trade networks, and they synthesized these influences into something uniquely their own. Unlike traditional architecture that builds upward, Nabatean craftsmen worked from the top down. They would begin at the highest point of a cliff face and carve downward, gradually revealing the building from within the living rock. Their primary tools were remarkably simple: iron chisels, hammers, and ropes for measuring. No power tools, no cranes, no scaffolding as we would recognize it. The precision they achieved with these basic implements is astonishing. Perfect symmetry, complex geometric patterns, and architectural details that would challenge modern stonemasons with advanced tools. We can trace the evolution of their skill over time. Early tombs feature simple designs, while later monuments display increasingly complex elements: Corinthian capitals, detailed figurines, and architectural flourishes that seem to defy the very medium they're working in. The Nabateans didn't just understand architecture, they understood geology. They selected cliff faces based on natural fault lines and rock quality. They knew which rock would hold detailed carving and which would crumble. This wasn't just artistry, it was science. Their crowning achievement is undoubtedly Al-Khazneh, known as the treasury. Standing nearly 40 meters tall and carved from a single massive cliff face, it features a level of detail that seems impossible for ancient tools. Analysis reveals that the treasury conforms to sophisticated mathematical proportions similar to those used in Greek architecture. The craftsmen maintained perfect symmetry across a facade wider than a modern 6-story building. Interestingly, while the exteriors were elaborately decorated, most interiors remained relatively simple, usually plain rectangular chambers. The Nabateans invested their artistic energy in what could be seen by the public. Most of Petra's carved monuments were tombs for the elite. The Nabateans believed in an afterlife and created these elaborate eternal homes for their deceased leaders and wealthy citizens. But they also constructed buildings for the living, temples, administrative centers, markets, and a massive theater that could seat 8,500 people, carved directly into the mountainside. Beyond the rock-cut monuments, Petra featured conventional built structures. A grand colonnaded street ran through the city center, lined with shops, public buildings, and luxurious homes for the elite. When we think of Petra, we often focus on the spectacular carved facades. But it's important to remember, this was a living, breathing city with all the infrastructure that implies: markets, workshops, homes, civic spaces. Most of these conventional buildings remain unexcavated or were destroyed by earthquakes and time. Even with modern understanding of their methods, replicating Nabatean craftsmanship remains challenging. Their work represents thousands of hours of labor by masters who dedicated their lives to transforming stone into art. The Nabateans chose their material wisely. The variegated sandstone contains traces of iron, manganese, and other minerals that create the famous rose color and spectacular striated patterns that shift throughout the day as the light changes. At their most sophisticated, Nabatean artisans didn't just impose their designs on nature, they worked with it, allowing the natural features and colors of the stone to enhance their creations. At its height in the 1st century BCE, Petra wasn't just an architectural wonder, it was one of the ancient world's wealthiest cities, a cosmopolitan hub where goods and ideas from 3 continents converged. The city sat at the nexus of caravan routes, connecting Arabia, Africa, India, Egypt, and the Mediterranean. Its merchants handled valuable commodities that wealthy Romans, Egyptians, and Greeks coveted. Exotic spices, precious incense, Chinese silks, Indian gems, African ivory, all passed through Nabatean hands, with each transaction adding to their coffers through taxes, fees, and profits. The scale of their commercial operation was enormous. Ancient sources tell us that a single shipment of incense could be worth the equivalent of millions in today's currency, and the Nabateans controlled this trade for centuries. Beyond trade, they developed their own valuable exports. Nabatean pottery was renowned throughout the region, remarkably thin-walled yet durable, often eggshell-thin ceramics decorated with delicate floral patterns. Archaeologists are still uncertain how they achieved this technical mastery. These vessels were both practical, lightweight for caravan transport, and beautiful, becoming luxury items in their own right. Their economic clout allowed them to mint their own currency, a privilege typically reserved for major kingdoms and empires. Nabatean coins have been found as far away as Italy and India, testifying to their commercial reach. What's fascinating about Nabatean culture is how they balanced cosmopolitanism with cultural distinctiveness. They adopted elements from every society they traded with, yet maintained a clear identity. Their art, religion, language, and customs remained uniquely Nabatean. They developed their own cursive script, an early form of Arabic, that would later influence the development of the Arabic alphabet. They recorded their commercial transactions, religious dedications, and laws in this distinctive writing. Their material culture reflected their position as cultural intermediaries. Wealthy Nabateans adopted Greek-style clothing and Roman dining customs, while maintaining Arabian religious practices and social structures. Their pantheon was headed by Dushara, their supreme deity associated with mountains, and Al-Uzza, a goddess of fertility and water. They typically worshipped at open-air sanctuaries rather than enclosed temples, a practice reflecting their nomadic origins. Their largest religious monument, Ad-Dir, or the monastery, sits atop a mountain requiring visitors to climb 800 steps. Its massive facade, nearly 50 meters wide, likely served for major religious ceremonies and festivals. Communal feasting was central to Nabatean social life. Archaeological evidence reveals elaborate dining halls where citizens and visitors would recline on cushions, enjoying imported wines and exotic foods while strengthening commercial and political bonds. The Nabateans understood the politics of luxury. By controlling desirable goods and showing they could create impossible architecture and abundant water in a desert, they were making powerful statements about their capabilities. It was commercial success, translated into cultural capital. Everyday objects reveal a society that valued refinement. Gold jewelry, imported perfumes, cosmetics, and fine textiles suggest a population enjoying the fruits of their commercial empire. While maintaining elements of their nomadic heritage, the urban Nabateans developed sophisticated living standards. Elite homes featured interior courtyards, private baths, wall paintings, and imported furniture, luxuries rivaling those found in Rome or Alexandria. Perhaps most remarkably, Petra appears to have been a relatively tolerant society by ancient standards. Archaeological evidence shows worship of foreign deities alongside their own, and a diverse population drawn by commercial opportunities. At its peak, this hidden valley supported a population estimated at 20,000 to 30,000 people, a substantial metropolis for the ancient world, and an extraordinary achievement in such an arid environment. The wealth and strategic location that made Petra prosperous also made it a target for expanding empires. By the late 1st century CE, Rome's shadow loomed over the Nabatean kingdom. In 106 CE, Emperor Trajan formally annexed the Nabatean realm, creating the Roman province of Arabia Petraea. Unlike many conquests, this one appears to have been relatively peaceful. No battles are recorded. The transition to Roman rule wasn't necessarily catastrophic for Petra. The city continued to prosper for a time, but its role changed. It became a regional administrative center rather than the capital of an independent trading kingdom. Under Roman administration, Petra was transformed. New buildings in Roman style appeared, older structures were repurposed, and the city was connected to the empire's famous road system, the Via Nova Traiana. But larger economic forces were already undermining Petra's commercial importance. Maritime trade routes through the Red Sea began to replace the overland caravans that had been Petra's lifeblood. Other caravan cities like Palmyra in Syria gained prominence, offering more direct routes between Mesopotamia and the Mediterranean. Slowly but surely, Petra's commercial advantage eroded. As the Roman Empire transitioned to Christianity, so too did Petra. By the 4th century CE, churches were being built, sometimes repurposing older Nabatean structures. Crosses were carved next to ancient pagan symbols. In 363 CE, disaster struck. A massive earthquake damaged much of the city, destroying buildings and critically damaging the sophisticated water management system that had sustained the population. Though efforts were made to repair the damage, the city never fully recovered. Another major earthquake in 551 CE delivered another devastating blow to the weakened city. The decline wasn't sudden. It was death by 1,000 cuts. Changing trade patterns, political shifts, natural disasters, and eventually climate change all contributed to Petra's gradual abandonment. By the 7th century, Petra was largely abandoned, though small groups continued to live among the ruins. The magnificent city that had once hosted merchants from 3 continents faded into obscurity, known only to local Bedouin tribes. For over a millennium, Petra remained hidden from Western knowledge. Then, in 1812, a Swiss explorer named Johann Ludwig Burckhardt made a remarkable discovery. Disguised as an Arab scholar and calling himself Sheikh Ibrahim, Burckhardt had heard rumors of amazing ruins in the mountains of southern Jordan. He convinced his Bedouin guide to take him there under the pretext of making a sacrifice at the tomb of Aaron. On August 22, 1812, Burckhardt became the first European in modern times to lay eyes on Petra's magnificent monuments. In his journal, he wrote of his astonishment, but had to hide his excitement from his guide to maintain his disguise. News of his discovery spread quickly through Europe, igniting a wave of exploration. Artists, adventurers, and archaeologists soon made the difficult journey to document this lost city. Scottish artist David Roberts visited in 1839, producing dramatic lithographs that introduced Petra to the Victorian public and cemented its place in the Western imagination as a romantic lost civilization. Serious archaeological work began in the early 20th century and continues to this day. Each excavation season reveals new facets of Nabatean ingenuity and raises as many questions as it answers. Modern technologies are revolutionizing our understanding of Petra. LiDAR scanning, ground-penetrating radar, and satellite imagery have revealed that what visitors see today is merely the tip of the iceberg. The city was far larger and more complex than we previously understood. Today, Petra is Jordan's most valuable cultural treasure and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Over 1 million tourists visit annually, walking the same paths that ancient traders once traversed. The Bedouin tribes who kept Petra's secret for centuries maintained a living connection to the site until modern times. Though most have been relocated to nearby settlements, their cultural connection to the ancient city remains strong. As we watch the changing light transform these rose-colored monuments throughout the day, we're witnessing the same spectacle that has played out for over 2 millennia. After more than a century of scientific study, we've only uncovered about 15% of what Petra has to offer. Hundreds of buildings remain buried beneath sediment, and countless questions await answers. What makes Petra eternally fascinating is how it demonstrates human adaptability and ingenuity. The Nabateans didn't just overcome their harsh environment, they harnessed its unique properties and created something magnificent. Their water management systems offer lessons that remain relevant today as regions worldwide face increasing water scarcity. Some modern communities in arid regions have adopted techniques pioneered by these ancient engineers. The Nabateans' greatest legacy may be how they remind us of humanity's resilience and creativity. In one of Earth's most challenging environments, they built not just a city, but a civilization, one that continues to inspire and astound us. The people who carved these monuments have been gone for 15 centuries, yet their vision endures, etched into living rock, preserved by the same desert that should have made their achievement impossible. Petra stands as testimony to what humans can accomplish when necessity, ingenuity, and ambition converge.